On the 27th of April each year, we celebrate Freedom Day in South Africa. But what does this mean? Let me start by asking you a few questions. I'd like you to choose summer or winter, strawberry or chocolate, blue or red, indoors or outdoors, pop or jazz. So I've chosen for you winter, strawberry, blue, outdoors, and jazz. Okay? I wonder whether that is okay. That will depend on whether or not you agree with me. You might feel mad that you would have to pick strawberry over chocolate. You might be grumpy with some of my choices, or you might be so happy because I chose exactly what you would choose. The thing is that when someone chooses for us, we sometimes say, "It's not fair. She always gets her way. I never get to choose. He always gets to pick first." We all like to have choice. We like having choices because it makes us feel in control. When we don't have choice, we may feel like we are being controlled. When we are part of making group choices, we feel included, and this is important because it gives us a sense of belonging in the group. Some choices matter more than others. Let's look at the human right that everyone is born free and equal. That means that no matter your gender, where you were born in the world, what skin color you are free to make choices and you are equal. No one is more important than anyone else. However, this human right is not always upheld. Let's go back in time to the apartheid era in South Africa. Apartheid was a system in South Africa whereby people were treated differently because of their race. Everyone was classified by their skin colour into one of four groups: white, black, coloured or Indian, and then were referred to as white or non-white. The government was white and they did not treat non-whites as equals. Non-whites were not allowed to live in the same communities as white people, they couldn't get the same education, and they were treated unfairly. A curfew was in place. That's a time by which everyone who was non-white had to be home. Non-whites had to carry a passbook round with them, a dompas, like an identity document. This had information about them, where they worked, and was used as a passport to prevent them from travelling places they weren't allowed. Non-whites were not allowed to vote. Well, except for a few that were told that they could based on where they lived and their wealth. But for the majority, they were not allowed to vote. As you can imagine, this caused much anger, frustration, and pain for the non-white South Africans, and they couldn't vote for the leaders that they wanted to be able to change the system that was in place. So the system meant that the minority of the country who were white got to vote for the leaders, and the majority of the country who were non-white did not get to vote. Does that seem fair to you? How do you think you would feel if you didn't have choice in something that was so important? There were many people who wanted to see change, and many protested with the anti-apartheid movement. People of different colours who felt that this was wrong would campaign that the laws would change and that we would have a more just South Africa. One of the most well-known freedom fighters of the time was Nelson Mandela. who was sent to prison for his involvement in the struggle against apartheid. He was arrested for activities such as organizing peaceful protests, campaigning for equal rights, and being a leader in the African National Congress, the ANC, which was fighting against apartheid. He spent 27 years in prison, but never gave up fighting for justice and was eventually released in 1990 and worked with President F.W. de Klerk to bring change to South Africa. So after his release, between 1990 and 1994, between getting out of prison and the first elections in South Africa, a lot of important things happened. First of all, there was a lot of talking and negotiating to do. Mandela talked with the government and other groups to make changes in the country. They wanted to end apartheid and make a fair system for everyone. Stopping apartheid laws. The laws that separated people by race were stopped. Political groups were allowed to meet again. Groups that had been banned before, like the ANC and PAC, could work openly again. This really mattered because it meant that people could talk about their ideas without being afraid. Sharing power. Mandela and President F.W. de Klerk worked together to lead the country during the changes. They wanted to ensure that everyone had a say in what happened next. Writing a new set of rules that we call the Constitution. This made sure that everyone's rights were protected and that South Africa would be a fair place for everyone. There were lots of problems to deal with. Even though things were getting better, there were still fights and problems in some places. People worked hard to stop this and to make sure that everyone could vote safely. And then help from other countries. During this time, other countries helped South Africa. They put pressure on the old government to change and made sure that the elections were fair. And so on the 27th of April 1994, the first democratic elections were held in South Africa. And Nelson Mandela was the first democratically elected president of South Africa. And so on Freedom Day, it marks the anniversary of the first democratic elections held. Freedom Day is a time to celebrate the end of apartheid and the beginning of a new era of freedom and equality for all South Africans. It's a day to remember the struggles and sacrifices made by people of all races to achieve democracy and equal rights. And perhaps it gives us the opportunity to think about how we each can still be part of bringing more freedom and justice in South Africa and the world, so that all the hopes and dreams for South Africa on that first Freedom Day continue to unfold in our future.